This is CBC Vancouver News.
An icon of the neighborhood gone.
When I came home last night, it was hard.
You know, you feel like crying because you're going to miss it.
Fire destroys a Steveston grocery store that was a cornerstone of the community. Plus, take a deep breath.
We have also deployed backup pumps and generators in case we need them.
Coastal BC braces for a series of storms with the potential for major flooding. Also, wetlands drying up.
Losing water in the whole system, so we're going to be losing habitat for these species.
We take you to the East Kootenay, where a groundswell effort attempts to reverse course. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. A series of atmospheric rivers is on target to soak the south coast, and it's already begun. Flood watches, advisories, and special weather statements are in place for many parts of the province. The storms could lead to localized flooding, dangerously high river levels, and possible landslides as well. Our Janella Hamilton takes a look at what's to come with our top story tonight.
In Port Coquitlam, crews have been working tirelessly to prepare for a deluge of heavy rain.
We do dike inspections, we clean storm inlets, we've lowered our pump station levels.
To help residents protect their homes against flooding, the city has set up 2 sandbag stations with thousands more filled and ready to go.
There's definitely some low-lying areas in the city of Port Coquitlam. We have those areas identified. We have also deployed backup pumps and generators in case we need them.
This high water alarm alerting crews to problem areas.
This is what we use when we have the catch basins that are full of dirt and stuff.
The rain prompting flood watches and advisories for several parts of BC. Up to 300 millimeters of rain is expected on the western side of Vancouver Island and the Coast Mountains, all the way through House Sound. Further inland, the Fraser Valley will see up to 120 millimeters.
With this one, we're definitely seeing the trajectory of the storms is quite different than what we experienced in 2021.
The province says it has improved its warning systems since the last flooding disaster.
There was a widespread concern, and I think well justified, that the information that was provided at the time didn't communicate the gravity of the potential threat to communities.
Along Highway 99, pooling water made for a challenging drive with limited visibility.
You don't know how deep it is and you don't know what's lurking beneath. There could be large potholes that could do damage to your vehicle or cause you to lose control. So you do need to slow down.
This system is bringing warmer temperatures as well, which will melt the little snowpack there is.
The shallow snowpack, there's not a lot of capacity to absorb rain.
And that could mean increased risk of flooding. The parade of storms may also bring gusty winds that could knock out power. The worst of it is forecast to hit Sunday night and stretch into early next week. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
A man has died and 3 people have been arrested after a hit and run in Surrey overnight. It happened around 2 a.m. not far from City Hall. A pedestrian was hit by a car and wound up dying at the scene. Witnesses described seeing a Ford Mustang take off. Officers later found the vehicle and arrested the 3 people inside. Roads in the area were closed for more than 12 hours for the investigation. A beloved independent grocery store in Steveston has been destroyed by fire. Our Karis Hogg is hearing from neighbors heartbroken about the loss of a community cornerstone.
On this wet, dreary Saturday morning, the smell of burned goods still sharp in the air. Bob Ransford comes to the scene of what's left, of what was once a gathering place for so many. As a lifelong resident of Steveston, and a frequent customer of Supergrocer and Pharmacy, he has a personal connection to the store. His first job was here as a kid.
Packing groceries and then one evening a week stocking shelves for $1 an hour.
The night before, the store in the heart of Steveston went up in flames. No one was hurt, but crews had a difficult time getting inside because of heavy smoke. The cause of the fire is still under investigation.
We have a real disaster that befalls this heritage building and this very old business that's here right in the heart of Steveston.
Ransford heard of what happened on his way home from work.
When I came home last night, it was hard to see see it threatened the way it was.
Sabina Aure is also emotional about losing this store.
I feel like, you feel like crying because you're going to miss it.
As a one-stop shop, customers say the independently owned supergrocer was unique. It had a post office and pharmacy and a lot of specialty items.
Yeah, and a lot of people, our people, they come here because they carry all different kind of Asian food, and the flowers especially.
Jim Vandertas's restaurant is just around the corner from Supergrocer and says this is a tight-knit community.
Still in shock, to tell you the truth. I mean, I talked to a few people this morning that were kind of like just as, brutally sad day for the village.
It's going to be a turning point for Steveston. It's a site right at the entrance to the main village, and it's been here forever, and it doesn't look like it can be rebuilt with what's there right now.
It's not known if the owners will try to rebuild, but for now, people here are mourning the loss of a cornerstone of the community. Karis Hogg, CBC News, Steveston.
The Columbia wetlands in BC's East Kootenay are drying up. Wetlands that once held open water all year long are now often parched in the winter and spring. And it's leaving migrating birds with fewer options to rest and feed during long journeys. But as our Corey Bullock tells us, a group of stewards is working to fix that.
Standing on the edge of the Columbia wetlands near Invermere, Katrina Levin explains how she's building beaver dams.
We go out and we get very muddy is the first step. We're trying to do it sort of low-key and as naturally as possible.
Beavers have long since left the western upland area at the base of the Purcell Mountains for reasons unknown. Their once beneficial dams left unmaintained, causing water to flow up and over, creating a stream where the wetland once was. Something Levin and a team of others are working to change with these man-made dams.
So that recharges the groundwater, that provides all kinds of habitat for organisms that live there, so higher biodiversity. And actually they even provide fire breaks in a lot of areas. So what happens, a fire will come up to that wetland and then stop.
According to Living Lakes Canada, certain areas of the Columbia wetlands have lost over 16% of permanent open water in the last few decades. It's one of the largest remaining intact wetlands in North America and a vital habitat for a variety of animal species. But approximately 40% of this floodplain remains unprotected.
Work has been done on these wetlands for many years, but what's happening now is the exacerbation of the cumulative impacts through climate change.
It's getting warmer, it's getting drier, it has been doing it for the last 40 years, and it's accelerating.
The wetlands span 26,000 hectares, stretching from Canal Flats up past Golden for about 150 kilometers, and attract over 160 types of migrating birds.
I've definitely identified that the wetlands that have water in the spring and the fall are where the migratory water birds are. So in the future going forward, I think that is definitely a concern that we're losing water in the whole system. So we're going to be losing habitat for these species.
The group is hopeful that copying the work of the industrious beaver will help fix that.
I can go out and build this beaver dam and it's going to make a wetland. So at the end of the day, I'm going to see this massive difference and hopefully see some wildlife move into the area and able to use it. So.
Just one way that these land stewards are working to keep this vital system running and hopefully return to a more thriving ecosystem. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Invermere.
Well, the BC government is looking to expand the crop of firefighters it recruits for the summer wildfire season. It wants to bring in trained professionals for the BC Wildfire Service, especially more so in rural communities. To make that happen, they're growing First Nations boot camps, extending the hiring period, and offering a bit more flexibility for work locations.
We really do want to build the volunteer and paid base of the fire service, particularly focused on rural and remote areas, whether it's Indigenous communities or rural communities. We're particularly interested in recruiting people who have their homes in those areas.
Applications to become a wildland firefighter are open until the end of March. So far, the province says more than 1,000 people have applied. Roughly 1,600 are hired each year. Thus, Nimo First Nation and Canada have signed a historic land reconciliation agreement, returning 80 hectares of federal land in Nanaimo to this Nimo people.
It's an emotional day for Nanaimo, knowing the history of that piece of property. but also the opportunity moving forward. It gives us excitement.
The First Nations traditional territories were used by Western Forest Products, the Department of National Defense, and as the location of the Nimo Indian Hospital.
We cannot forget ever, but we can't be stuck. We have to go forward and be stronger. So that's what today is about, the beginning of a healing and celebration.
Plans for the land include on-reserve housing, economic development, infrastructure upgrades, and sustainable forestry projects. Well, today marks the 25th anniversary of Family Literacy Day.
Learning and literacy is a family function. The family in our home is typically our first learning experience, and our parents or our grandparents and extended family are our first mentors and coaches, teachers. So this day celebrates that.
Libraries across Canada held family-friendly events to mark the milestone year. This year's theme was Let's Have a Party. As far as tips go to encouraging your kids to read, the big one is getting them interested in books as young as possible. After a 4-year hiatus, the Sonny Samuelson bobsled race has returned to Rosland this weekend for the Winter Carnival. Thrill seekers grouped into fours, barreling down the 4-block stretch of town in their homemade bobsleds, hitting speeds of up to 60 kilometers an hour. Carnival organizers say the race was parked for a few years while they explored insurance options and addressed some safety concerns. So now that's all been worked out, they say, and some multi-generational sledders were happy to renew the family tradition, including the crew that won today's race.
My dad and his team built it in 1988 when it got brought back. It took a 20-year hiatus. I think it didn't run for 20 years. It came back in 1988. They built the sled and started running it then.
It's been a hard row, but I'm super excited about all the people that helped and contributed to making the track run, because it was slushy, but it got faster and faster. In fact, my team did not win today. This team to the other side did win, and they were running fast.
He says people have been running sleds in Rosland for more than 100 years. And despite the slushy conditions, they still put on a show for close to 1,000 spectators. That's nearly 1/3 of the community. Well, today is Holocaust Remembrance Day, when the world remembers the 6 million Jewish lives lost during the Holocaust. Up next, a look at how victims are being memorialized. We'll take you there after the break. Welcome back. People around the world are marking Holocaust Remembrance Day today amid heightened tensions from the war between Israel and Hamas. And it's been 79 years since the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the concentration camp in Poland. The CBC's Mike Crawley looks at how victims are being memorialized there and here at home as well.
Witam ambasadorów państw.
At the site of the Auschwitz concentration camp, a solemn ceremony marks International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
6 million of us were murdered just for being Jews.
79 years ago today, Auschwitz was liberated, making the world aware of its horrors.
I survived. My father was one of the people gassed.
Bernard Offen was imprisoned in Auschwitz as a child. Nearly 60 members of his extended family were killed in the Holocaust.
I keep on telling the story because of people who don't want to believe that such a thing happened.
While the day is about remembering what was done to Jewish people in the past, Israel's ambassador also brings a message about the present.
136 hostages are still held by Hamas terrorists and must be released immediately.
Please rise as we recite the memorial prayer.
With this year's anniversary falling on the Jewish Sabbath, some commemorations took place Friday, including in Ottawa.
Okay, who else has a question?
These grade 6 students learn about the St. Louis, a ship that left Germany in 1939 with more than 900 Jews aboard, only to be denied entry in Cuba, the US, and Canada, and forced to return to Europe. A story told for children in this book by a Toronto author.
So I want kids to understand it. I want them to be moved by it. And listen, my ultimate goal is that they're going to want to read more and learn more about this history.
Ontario makes Holocaust education part of the curriculum in both grades 6 and 10. It's to become mandatory in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba schools by next year.
Given this uptick in anti-Semitism that we're seeing here in Toronto and around the world, I think Holocaust education is more important than ever.
As the number of people who lived through the Holocaust dwindles with time, that education can keep their memories alive. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, more fallout today in the wake of Israel's allegations that some United Nations employees may have helped Hamas carry out its attacks on October 7th. The U.S. and Canada are among 9 countries that have suspended funding to the UN's relief agency during the investigation. Now, that agency says the move is impeding their ability to carry out humanitarian work in the Gaza Strip. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh has more.
As displaced civilians scramble to flee the fighting in the South Gaza city of Khan Yunis, UNRWA, the UN agency tasked with helping them, faces accusations some of its employees aided Hamas on October 7th. Canada, one of several countries to suspend financial support amid appeals from Palestinian officials.
This decision is incorrect and should be stopped immediately. We urge all these countries to repay the UNRWA because it's a humanitarian issue.
The UN says it's investigating the accusations against UNRWA, but warns suffering will only increase.
There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza who rely on UNRWA's humanitarian work, who rely on humanitarian assistance, even more now than they did before.
So far, the US, Britain, Australia, Italy, Finland, and Canada have all paused funding, with the White House calling the investigation an important step.
We expect that will be a complete and thorough and transparent investigation. We all want to see that.
Israel, insisting it's acting in self-defense, is denouncing the UN. Its ambassador to the UN accusing UNRWA of collaborating with terrorism. It comes at the same time as the UN's top court, the International Court of Justice, warned Israel against committing acts of genocide, but stopped short of ordering a stop to the war, disappointing many Gazans who are looking to the court to put international pressure on Israel for a ceasefire. Unless I'm allowed to return to my home, I consider the decision of the court unfair, says this man. In Khan Yunis, Israel continues to target what it calls Hamas infrastructure. This former Israeli negotiator and cabinet minister doesn't see an end.
To stop the war today means to keep Hamas in power in Gaza, and this is something that we cannot accept.
While the U.S. says it's optimistic a ceasefire can still be negotiated, the fighting isn't letting up as the diplomatic strain deepens. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Elsewhere overseas, the United States says its forces have today destroyed an anti-ship missile in Yemen aimed at the Red Sea. It followed a Houthi strike yesterday that left a tanker crew battling a fire. The CBC's Dominic Velitis has those details.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have stepped up attacks on shipping in the Red Sea area of late, including that strike on a British-linked fuel tanker yesterday evening. We can show you some pictures of the aftermath of the attack. This is the tanker Marlin Luanda. It was hit by a Houthi missile as it was passing through the Gulf of Aden. That's the deep water basin which links the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea. Now, although no one was killed or injured in the attack, a fire did break out on board the vessel, which the crew was still trying to extinguish this morning. French, Indian and US naval ships all rushed to the scene to help the tanker after it issued a distress call. Now, the fire is out. The Marlin Luanda is on its way to a safe harbour. In a statement, a Houthi spokesperson claimed it was targeted in response to, quote, American-British aggression against our country. Now, this morning, Houthi media claimed the United States and the UK launched 2 airstrikes in response, targeting Yemen's main oil export terminal, the port of Ras Isa in Yemen's Hodeidah province. No comment yet from either the American or British militaries regarding these alleged strikes. Nothing is confirmed, but they appear to have come after the US struck and destroyed a Houthi anti-ship missile that was preparing to launch into the Red Sea in the early hours of this morning. US Central Command, which has responsibility for the Middle East, said in a statement that this missile presented an imminent threat to shipping in the region, both merchant and US Navy vessels, and that taking it out was an act of self-defense. Dominic Velitis, CBC News, London.
You're looking at a live shot of BC Place in Science World in the background. Well, heavy rain is on tap for the South Coast, yes. Today was a bit of a washout and only a taste of what's to come. The worst is set to hit in 24 hours. I'll time out the exact arrival of the atmospheric rivers with the full details in your full forecast coming up next.
So I know when I really like a song, if within the first 3 seconds, I'm already vibing to it.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond.
It's not one person dictating what good music is, it's the community sharing what good music is.
Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
Let's take a look at this latest system that is set to target the South Coast. If you thought we were a washout already in Metro Vancouver for Saturday, well, take a look at what's to come. We'll dry out a little bit for Sunday, so enjoy that while it lasts. Here's this next series of storms, a parade, as Environment Canada is calling it. You'll see it never really lets up for the next few days. It's just kind of pounding all the coastal sections, and even as it moves inland, we'll see that precipitation continue, of course, for higher elevations that'll come down as snow. Here's the 72-hour rainfall forecast. Just look at that accumulation we see over the next few days. The dark red into the gray is where we'll see upwards of 100 millimeters of rain into Tuesday. Sunday night into Monday is when we'll see the worst of it, but this will take a while for it to resolve itself. So we are in for a wet couple of days. Here's the forecast lows for tonight. I want to point out parts of the interior. Really, the headline is how warm these temperatures are. This system is bringing in much more seasonally warm temperatures than what we're used to. Even Prince George, the overnight low is average -15. Tonight, +4 is the overnight low. So certainly a lot warmer than we're used to. Here's a forecast BC-wide tomorrow. As we said, a lot of rain. It's not quite as daunting as it looks for inland parts, especially through the interior and the Kootenays as well. These are more passing showers, about a 60% chance for many areas of the southern interior as well. Even those highs, Kamloops high of 11 degrees. The average daytime high there is usually still in the negative digits. So again, those warmer temperatures really persisting. Here's the 5-day forecast for Vancouver. Rain, rain, lots of rain to come, but still warm. That is your late news for this Saturday, January 27th. For news anytime, anywhere, download the free CBC News app. You can always find us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.